Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. I am so happy you are here. Today, we are speaking to a star of the Broadway show, K-pop. He is 1/8 of Fate. It is James Coe. Yay! James Coe is an actor, choreographer, and dancer based in New York City. He has had the privilege of working with artists such as BTS, P Nation, and FM Entertainment. And he recently made his Broadway debut playing Wooyeon in the history-making show K-pop. So yay! We're so happy that you're here, James. Obviously, the show recently closed, and so we're just trying to really bring to light all the amazing things about K-pop and really what made it so great on Broadway, because I saw it twice and I loved it both times. So first of all, James, it is so nice to see you again. We met at the stage door
hmm
about, I guess, almost a month ago. I don't know. Time is a weird.
Time doesn't exist anymore, so it's all
No, it
good.
really doesn't. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Well, thank you for having me. And hi guys, I'm James. Nice to see you guys. But yeah, I'm good. I don't know. We're just doing our thing. It's holiday season already, so I'm sure literally everyone's taking their breaks, taking their breather. So we're good.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
guess we should start at the very beginning with you as a dancer, actor, performer, everything. So when did you first begin performing? Like, was it something you always loved to do, or was it something that you discovered maybe later? Even though I don't know how that
hmm
would be possible since you're so good. So,
Nah,
like,
I
really,
was
where did you start?
start. I mean, we could start in a number of places, but Um, I think something that most people don't know about me is I started pretty late. I started dancing in college. And obviously compared to a lot of people who were raised in like studios who like literally like dance when they're 5 years old and do their ballet and then grow up and then they want to do other stuff. Then they're doing jazz. And by the time they're like 18, they have like 10 years under their belt. I literally started in college. And that was just from I honestly think I would have started earlier if it wasn't just like for the neighborhood I was in. I lived in Westchester County, which is like predominantly at least my neighborhood is like predominantly white. And then it was a pretty small neighborhood too. So no one really did dance. And it was a really academic
Oh,
high school that I went to also. So no one was really doing dance like that. Not that many Asian kids. Yeah, there was like it was like maybe like a 20% Asian population, but in a graduating class of like 100 people, like that's not very many,
no, no,
right?
not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I started because I like watched shows like ABDC, like America's Best Dance Crew. Um, and I would see like crews like Jabberwockies and So Real Crew and Keba Modern and We Are Heroes and Quest Crew, like essentially seeing people look more like me, right? Like the classic, like I didn't know that was possible until I saw people like me, like on TV. And yeah, I didn't know there were classes or anything. I just assumed that those were things that happen on the West Coast, since those are mostly West Coast teams or like not New York teams at least. So then I actually got interested in dance once I got to college, and then there were more Asian people there, and like there for so whatever reason there were so many teams. Like every culture club had their own, like essentially their own dance team for whatever reason. Like the Chinese club had their own, the Filipino club had their own, and like, um, even like certain dorms had their own like club too, like for dance. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but yeah. So I just joined one, and then yeah, kind of went from there. And I'm a pretty competitive person, so like I just wanted to get good.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that was the only intention. It's like, oh, this is really fun, and I want to get good. And
Mhm.
then from there, we just, we went to train, like went to classes in the city and took like community classes. And like the intention was never to like, be a professional. It was literally just like, this is fun and I want to get good. And I
Yeah.
get to hang out with my friends. So it's like, yeah, that sort of professional aspect of it didn't pop in until way later, way later.
And it's what college did you go to? Because I mean, with dance teams on like every corner, that sounds very interesting.
I went to school in Long Island. So I went to school at Stony Brook University.
Mm.
Still, I would say even compared to the West Coast, like West Coast, like there's so many teams out there that do so many competitions. But for whatever reason, Stony Brook and Long Island has just a good chunk of teams that come out of it
That's awesome. I
for
mean,
whatever reason.
you just happened upon, I guess, the school that was perfect for you, which is great because I'm currently auditioning for, BFA programs in musical theater and trying to like
Let's go.
figure out where I would fit in these places,
Mhm,
and just trying to find what would be great for me. And I was wondering, as a Chinese and Filipino performer, like, was your
mhm,
love for, I guess, dancing once you maybe got more professional and serious, like, I guess was it supported by your family? Because I know for me, I'm very
mm,
lucky that both my parents, are really supporting me in my decision of what I would like to do with the rest of my life. But
mhm.
that's not always the case for most people. So if you don't mind just kind of sharing maybe that aspect of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think my parents directly, they showed their support in being not unsupportive, if that makes sense, right? So I think I'm like one of four. I have four brothers, so I'm one of five. And so I'm in smack in the middle. So I think
Yeah.
being smack in the middle, already having two older brothers who are in their very different fields themselves, and also who had to take some time to figure out like what they were trying to do professionally and in their lives too. I think at least if I'm trying to be the mindset of my parents, they probably saw me as like, okay, like he also has the opportunity to do whatever he needs to do. And like we know that he can do that stuff and we trust him to be able to do that stuff and figure it out.
Mhm.
So it was never like, oh, we're gonna send you, they were never like dance parents, right? They're never like, oh, we're gonna send you to these studios and we're gonna send you to whatever. Cause like they didn't know any of that. And they still know what like whatever I do sometimes, right, is like so vague. But I think for them, the support comes in with like seeing the results, I guess, right? Like
Mhm.
when I finally did book some bigger gigs, like BTS concerts, or like I booked like this Broadway show, right? Like now they're able to see all
Yeah.
this progress like happen in real life. And so they're able to be more supportive because now they know what they're supporting, I guess, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. But obviously at the same time, you get, the aunts and the uncles and everybody who's like, oh, but my company's doing this and like I heard they're opening for that and it's cool. Like I understand they love us and they want us to like, they want us to thrive and be successful and not struggle the way
Yeah.
that they did in the same ways. But I'm just like, no, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was where the support came in that sort of a way where it's like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing now. Okay, now it makes more sense. I can now let's tell our family to go buy tickets and like let's go to let now they know what that is, like
Mhm.
being able to say, oh, he's on Broadway or something. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
he's dancing for BTS or something. Like it's easier to
The graph.
quantify.
Yeah.
It's an easier to grasp concept than being like he's a dancer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
I tell people that I'm, doing auditions for BFA programs and they're like, "What's a pre-screen? Like
Yeah.
what even is that?" Or it's just like it's hard to fully understand, I guess, the concept unless you really are in that world.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I mean, that's great that at least your parents, once they obviously have done some amazing things and the fact that they're able to just like go now and support you, even though they might not fully be in that world. I think that's probably like probably one of the best things that you could hope for is just like support,
Hmm.
even though it may not be like overwhelming, at least,
Exactly.
it's not the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then going back to K-pop, I wanted to ask, when did you first get involved? Like, did you have an audition process or workshops, anything? I was talking to Kate about
Yes.
how her journey was a little bit kind of odd as well, and I know
Hmm.
sometimes it's not always a linear audition, booking, and then doing it. Like, so
Hmm.
what was yours?
Yeah. I mean, it's actually fun because I was actually talking to Kate about this yesterday because we were hanging out yesterday, and I was like my personal audition process with K-pop was like back in maybe late 2018 or 2019, and one of my mentor at the time, Bo Park, was working as the associate on the show. I was associate choreographer at the time.
Mhm.
And she was just like, hey James, there's this new show that I'm working on. It's like some Broadway musical. They're just doing like a lab workshop. So it's only like 4 or 5 weeks long. And you just go in, do the lab, and you're done. And they're like, and they pay you nicely compared to what we usually get. And I'm like, okay, like and that's all I know. I've never done Broadway my whole life. I don't know what a lab is. I just know that for 4 weeks, I have a nice consistent paycheck. And I'm like, cool, all I gotta do is do a little dance and then go home, right? Because at the time too, I only dance. So I assumed from my knowledge of typical Broadway things that I'm like, oh, there's plenty of these roles where they're just dancers, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the ensemble, like, yeah, they have singing parts, but for the most part, they are decorated as like the dancers are more for like set pieces in a way, right? Um, I audition and it's a dance audition. We do the dance audition. It's a ton of fun. Me and my friend, who's also we're in like the same team under that associate choreographer. We're like we're just having a fun time. Like choreography is not the hardest thing in the world, and we dance, and it's like we're chilling, and we're like yeah, yeah, yeah. And then past that round, and then we get to our little singing audition, and I'm like, ah, I've never sung in my whole life. like like at least for an audition, right? Especially not for something like Broadway. But again, I'm just thinking in my head, it's just a lab, whatever that means. We just gotta hold a note.
Yeah.
Cool. We sing our little song. I sing like I sing this old like throwback K-pop song, and then I sing Hangnom, like that version back in the day. And then and I'm just like, what here it is. Like I don't have any vocal training. I didn't
Yeah.
take like any coaching. I literally just they gave me the lyrics and I'm like, here it is. And I guess they saw at least that I can hold a note at the time. But I got through that and then I did the lab. I got into pass audition, did the lab, and I was like, great, 4 weeks done. Peace. I had a ton of fun, everybody. And then fast forward, and then they're like, we're doing another lab. You want to do that? Do you want to do the next lab? And I'm like, sure, another 4 weeks of like getting consistent pay. Let's do it. 4 weeks, boom. And then I'm like, great, all good. And they're like, hey, you want to come in for the reading, like script reading? And I'm like, this is going too far. Like I'm still the mindset that I just think that like we're doing ensemble stuff and that we're like we're just here to help essentially, right? Like I'm sure I'm like in my head, I'm like, I'm sure they'll book their musical theater people and I'm sure they'll book their people that do this stuff. But then turns out like no, they actually want like people from pretty diverse backgrounds, not just being like ethnicity, but like the way we usually think of diverse backgrounds, I feel like.
Yeah.
But we're talking about like people who aren't from musical theater, people who are like actors, people who are not from New York, people who are from Korea and the idols and the people who are from TV and film and dancers like me and Josh.
Mhm.
Like they were really pulling from all these other places to get a more well-rounded product essentially, right? And so
Mhm.
then I end up just sticking around somehow. I explain this all the time to people that I just feel like I kind of just like snuck my way through. Like I just bypassed everything that the usual theater crowd goes through and I just showed up. But I know it's because for this specific show, like it required something different, right?
Yeah,
It
and I think
requires something
all your
different than the
past,
usual.
yeah, with all your
Yeah.
past experience, I'm sure that was like what they saw in you, and they were like, okay, we need this guy. Like he's done,
Yeah.
the BTS especially. Like I'm sure people see that and are like, oh my goodness, like that's insane. And I've like seen your videos online too. And I mean, I asked Kate this question, but like, what was your reaction to booking? Because I mean, obviously you said like, you're just kind of like, oh, 4 weeks to pay, great. Like for Kate,
Yeah.
have a little bit more
I know.
kind of
Yeah.
getting the call. Like, did you feel
Mhm.
that at all, or were you just kind of like, oh, okay, great, like,
I think what's yeah, I think where the distinction is that like again, like my background is not Broadway at all. Like so I have no idea about what any of this truly means, right? Like I'm just like, oh great. Like we're back, we're back, we're back. We're doing okay, we're having fun. Like I don't think the realization really hit until later of like, oh, like the like until we're really starting to like rehearse for the actual Broadway show that I'm like starting to really actually think in my head like, oh, like this is like Broadway. Like this is the thing that like our parents like talk about when they immigrate about like being on Broadway or doing shows like or like being in New York, right? Like it's
Mhm.
so like stereotypical American dream sort of a vibe. And
Yeah.
then like I didn't even realize that I don't think that's sort of a vibe kicked in until a lot later.
Mhm.
So I didn't have the immediate like I opened the letter, I'm like, or the email, I guess. I opened the email, I'm just like, oh my God. Like I didn't feel like that. I felt like, oh, like we're back at it and like it's fun. And like I know like I'm here to help and that I'm just like a small puzzle piece in this big thing. So like my attitude is like, okay, I'm gonna go in and just do my best and like help out as much as I can and just have fun.
Mhm.
And then yeah, and I think that reaction just came in later, being like, oh, like this is a big deal. Like what we're doing is like it's
Mhm.
like substantial. And I think we had to make it substantial almost like mentally because some I feel like sometimes it wasn't directly given to us how big of a deal like what we were doing was.
Mhm.
um and I think we all had inklings of it, right? We all had inklings of knowing how big of a deal it is to like have this representation and to have all these different people in the same room and to be working on this project. But then yeah, I think it just took time for it to like click for everybody, like, oh, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least that's how I felt about this. I don't know, the journey of how I just felt about getting onto this project and doing it.
Mhm. Yeah, and then, you get to be on the cover of a playbill, like,
I know. I
and
was
be on
like,
the side of the theater, you get to do all these cool things and
I
be
know, it's
at the
so
very
weird.
forefront.
So strange. I'm like, I thought we were just dancing, and here we are, like being
I
in the
know,
same K-pop group as Kevin Wu. Like, what is this?
yeah, and obviously, like, I'm very much into the Broadway world, hence, like,
Hmm.
everything behind me, but it's interesting to hear about your different experience coming into this world, like, not being as familiar with it, because like, technically, I came into it later technically as well, coming into singing, starting, like, in high school, and,
Hmm.
not having the same experience as most people, and so I kinda get it on that sense, I think, whereas, like, you feel, like, a little bit out of place or, like, "Wait, is this
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to be doing or feeling, or am I good enough as everyone?"
Yeah.
You're just having those weird feelings of, like, "Am I behind or am I
Yeah. Am I
really on
doing
this
this
track?"
right? Like, what's
Yeah.
everyone else doing? Yeah,
Yeah, and I know
100%.
for you, like, starting in college, that's, like, very late, but obviously I mean, now look at you, you're, like, so accomplished in terms of your career, you're, like, an insanely good dancer, like, I mean, I don't even know because 'cause I'm not a dancer, like, whatsoever, so, like,
I mean,
it's
yeah, I
amazing.
mean, it's like playing catch up, right? And then again, like I said, like I'm like super competitive, so it wasn't even like I was competing against other people. Like I'm very competitive like myself. Like I want to get good myself, and
Mhm,
then like I'm also the type of person like when I see really dope people do their thing, like I would see the seasoned dancers and the seasoned choreographers, and like I'm the type of person that's not like, oh, like I wish I could be that person. Like I'm so jelly. Like I'm a type that's like, how do I do that? Like I wanna be that person in that way where like I wanna have that skill and that seasonedness, that
mhm.
sauce. Like, how do I do that?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think having that attitude has helped me a lot in terms of like figuring out like how to get good, right? Or whatever that means, or at least improve, right? Because it's not like an end journey, but just like
Yeah.
get better at what I was doing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
with all your past experience, like, what was it working with what was it like working with BTS in that company? Like, did that experience kind of prepare you to pretty much be in your own K-pop group and kind of be the equivalent of BTS in the RBY family?
Oh man. I mean, I think doing because I worked with them a couple of times. I did one like I they had a New Jersey stop 1 year for their world tour, and then they had a New York stop for another year of their different world tour, and then they came back for this event when they talked at the UN. They also did a performance at the UN, so I was also on that project too. And I think, at least for me, jumping on the very first time that I worked with them, it was very early on in like my professional dance career. So
Mhm,
like I'm not signed to an agent. I don't really do gigs. Like I don't really know how these transactions work. It was more like my friend or my mentor is like, hey, are you free on this day? I want to shoot a project. Or hey, this up and coming random artist wants to make a music video. Are you free to help make some something, whatever, like skeleton crew it or something, right? It was never anything big. And I think like that first gig was definitely like the big leap into a bigger gig where I was like more of a had a bigger role in everything, right?
Mm.
Um, and I think for me, what prepared me the most, I guess, or what pivoted for me in my head was like just actually performing that in a stadium
Mhm.
and like having like the screaming and the yelling and the pyro and the music and like the lights, like everything just hitting you at the same time. And then realizing like, oh, like this thing is real. You know what I mean? This thing being like being able to perform, being able to like be more of a main character, being able to like be Asian and like be in front of a big crowd, like these
Mhm.
are all realities that real people like live like every day. You know what I mean? And so then I think for that pivot, that was like a pivot for me being like, oh, like how do I do that again? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how do people do this on the consistent, like the choreographers who work on these tours, the creative directors who work on these tours, even just like the staff who are a part of the company, the artist company in Hive or Big Hit or whatever at the time, like how do they operate so regularly, I guess, right, on this schedule? And I think that that kind of unlocked more of like in my head of like how does this work, how does that work? I love trying to figure out how things work, like why is this like this, why is this like that. um so yeah, that was a big pivot in terms of like, okay, I want to do more of this, like how do I do more of this? Who do I
Yeah.
need to talk to, what do I need to do, how do I become a person that like can book this consistently, essentially.
Mhm.
um but yeah, and they're really dope guys. They're really nice. The
I'm
guys are really
not
nice.
like I wasn't really a K-pop fan even just before seeing this show, but now like after getting to see K-pop and seeing kind of what it's all about, it's made me want to
Hmm.
like explore into the actual K-pop world, and especially BTS is a big one, and obviously I've heard all their hits, but
Hmm.
it's very cool to like hear about all those different experiences and what it's like working either on Broadway in a K-pop group or on in I guess
Yeah, like
you'd call the
in
real
the
world
K-pop
K-pop.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actual K-pop world. And for you, like, since you are Chinese and Filipino, like I'm Taiwanese, so I'm not Korean at all.
Hmm.
And for you not being Korean as well, like, can you talk
Hmm.
about kind of being, I guess, immersed in the culture, like just through your work?
Hmm.
Because I know for me, like seeing K-pop, it's not, I feel, a strong affinity with like Korean heritage because that's not, I don't have any,
Hmm.
but it's more of just like the Asian Americanness about it, or like even Kate being half Taiwanese, like that's the huge thing for
Hmm.
me. And can you just talk about like maybe learning from other cast members about the culture and the
Hmm.
language and just anything you'd want to share?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I actually grew up being like on the early side of YouTube, and like so for me, K-pop was in, oh my gosh, I don't want to date myself too much, but like in 2000 like 9ish, 10ish, right? Like I think K-pop was starting to like figure itself out in like in terms of like the internet. Like people were starting to pick it up. But you had to be in very specific circles, right? To actually like know that this existed and also digest it in a way that makes sense. Because again, even growing up, like there's not that many Korean kids in school, right?
Yeah.
um and then even then, like even if they're Korean, like maybe they just don't like K-pop or something, you know what I mean? So I actually grew up also watching like these K-pop music videos like early at the time, especially groups like Kara and like SNSD and like 2PM. These are the groups that are like just debuting at the time, who are like super seasoned these years, right? These
Mhm.
days they're like, I mean, either they're disbanded or like they're like in their like 10th year anniversary or something.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, and even those people, I was like, I want to do what they're doing too. Like, I want to perform, and like they're so cool looking. And I'm like in high school looking like a stick, and like I'm like 50 pounds, right? Like, and I'm like, I want to do what they're doing. So I was like, so even in middle school through early high school, like I was going to, there were all these like K-pop forums online back in the day. Like all K-pop was a big forum, and like Soompi was a big forum, and they still are pretty big. But I think back in the day, like for people who weren't directly involved in that culture, that was like the spots to be. So
Mhm.
then I would learn about all these auditions happening. I went to K-pop Star Audition like season 1, this TV show, season 2, 3, SM auditions, YG auditions. Like I wanted to be an idol back in the day.
Mhm.
I sucked at everything. I've never taken a dance class, never took singing lessons. I didn't speak Korean. I was ugly as fuck. like all these things together, right? Like I
Mhm.
had no shot. And realistically, I had no shot. But like I would still go because I think it was just the prospect of like being able to do that
Mhm.
was enough for me. Just the idea that I could that this was like an avenue that I can just at least like be on that road, at
Yeah.
least sit on it, at least sit on the highway in traffic. And I know I'm not gonna go anywhere, but at least that's like cool enough for me at that time.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I've grown up like listening to K-pop here and there. Of course, like some I'd like fall out and fall back in, like in terms of I don't think I was ever like a big fan per se, but it was just something that always was just like in my playlist or just something that I was interested in terms of like, oh, well, who's this group now? Who's that group? My friends listening to somebody, who are they listening to? So I didn't really need to get acclimated too much in terms of like what K-pop was and what K-pop is these days and like the evolution of it. Um, I think being not Korean though is like that is the layer of like how do I fit into this, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
not trying to like because obviously I'm Chinese Filipino and like yes, like we're all for the most part like East Asian on the cast, like East Asian in terms of at least like characteristics or like traits, I guess,
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
we do things. Um, so I guess yeah, we connected in that way, but obviously like yeah, the Korean cast they love speaking Korean. So I'm like I'm gonna go learn more Korean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like the least that we could do is just like, oh, like if we want to like get to know everybody properly, like let's just all learn a little more Korean.
Mhm.
And like so we crack open some textbooks, watch more variety shows, watch some dramas, and then like good to go. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and I think it's just a cool also like what you said, like Kate's Taiwanese too. And like being able to realize how many different types of people are just in this cast. Like me and Julia are both Filipino, and even behind the scenes, like Clint Ramos on designing is like Filipino. Camille also in like dressing
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
also Filipino, and like there's just so many also just people of color backstage doing their thing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. It's just like I think on the front, yes, it's so cool, but on the back, it's like even cooler because I'm like I've never worked in this capacity like this with so many
Yeah.
different people, and it felt so at home in a lot of ways. Just
Yeah.
being like, oh, like everyone's literally speaking like 5 different languages backstage, and like everyone's cool with that. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
never happens, but like that should be the norm all the time.
Yeah, I know. I think I saw some videos of Wooyeon learning like Tagalog with
Yeah.
the dress, like Camille the dresser, and so like
Hmm.
seeing those kinds of things is super fun because I do also like in my community. I live in Bakersfield. There is actually like
Mm.
a pretty big Filipino community, and so
Hmm.
for my family, like we'll go to a yearly party where they'll have like lechon and all of this all of the
Yeah.
good stuff. And so they call us honorary Filipinos just go every single year, and it's just always like really
Nice.
fun. And with my grandparents, they speak Mandarin. I can't speak
Hmm.
anything, but like the language thing, I think with some people it probably bothers them, maybe not
Hmm.
knowing, but for me I'm like it's totally normal. I totally
Yeah.
understand that, especially watching just the music in K-pop. I can't understand everything that's being said, but I get the feeling.
Yeah.
You're able to figure things out. It's not too
Yeah.
tricky. And
Exactly.
especially like with my grandparents, trying to figure out what they're saying if it's about me.
Hmm.
And it's like, just knowing that it's not the end of the world, or like try to learn those little words or do things just
Hmm.
to be able to make them feel comfortable, and also so you can feel comfortable at the same time. Um,
Yeah.
and like not that if someone's speaking a different language, they're completely cut off. It's like there is
Yeah.
connection that can be made, and I think that's like really important. And especially what you said about everyone backstage also being people of color. I know it's like the stage manager as well. who now works on worked on Hades Town and like Strange Loop and
Mhm.
everything. And it's like those are the kinds of things that it's not just the on stage, but it's also backstage and not just focusing on the people that are seen, but the people who really make
Yeah.
the shows work, which is, you couldn't do a show without a stage manager or a dress
Yeah,
or any of
exactly.
that thing. And so the fact that K-pop was able to do that, um, backstage diversity, that's really amazing and really
Yeah.
super
And
powerful
I
for this
yeah.
Broadway in general.
Yeah, and I think like to what you're saying too, it's like with language especially, like because me growing up, right? Like I'm like also surrounded by a lot of languages, but I haven't been able to pick up like a lot of it, right? I
Yeah,
think that's just natural growing up as like a first gen or what are we, second gen? I don't know.
I
Like
don't know.
being the kids of like immigrant parents, it's uh yeah, it was just naturally like our circles are mostly English because we just grew up in America. But then I think not knowing a language is like sometimes considered like weakness for whatever reason, especially in America. It's like, oh, I don't know this language. I feel bad. I feel whatever, like I feel excluded. But then it's such an easy opportunity to like connect to people, right? It's like it's such an easy window to just crack open a book or like crack open even like a translator app that right like it's so accessible these days, and to learn like a phrase or two, like how hard is it to learn like 1 or 2 words a day? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? At the end of the year you could say like 600 words or something, you know what I mean? Like it's small things like that that I think are really accessible, and I think if we all just kind of had that mindset where it's not as bad, and it's also really fun to just be
Mhm.
able to talk to people like in that clip that you probably saw of Bohyung like speaking Tagalog. Like I was there too, and I'm like, this is hysterical. Like it's so funny and it's so fun, and
Yeah.
it's nothing serious, right? And we're just able to like do our thing and like be ourselves, and I think that was just such a big part of the show that like I enjoyed so much, that like we can be ourselves, like despite everyone literally being from wherever they were from
Mhm.
and having from whatever background. Like yeah, it was really cool hearing like literally people speaking Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and Tagalog like backstage like nothing. Like it's so fun. um but yeah,
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 I know I
yeah, yeah,
always look at my grandparents, I'm like, "What?" I'm like,
yeah.
"Explain it now to me so I can fully understand," and, like, just trying to learn even though it's, like, Asian languages are so hard, but,
Hmm.
they're obviously very intricate and very interesting and obviously sound so cool, when it's just everyone's a different culture, and that's, like, I think probably never been done on Broadway before because that's
Hmm.
just not how things have ever worked. I mean, I know one instance where, like, few of the cast members in Into the Woods are Japanese and they're able to speak like Japanese to each other. And that's like, very, I think probably one of the rarest occurrences is when, you know, us as like Asian American or Asian people can just like kind of be in a space where, we're all respecting each other and all respecting
Hmm.
our different cultures and being able to share that with everyone else. Like even for me, I got to like this summer I was at a summer program at NYU for like musical theater, and I got to introduce all my friends to, like, Taiwanese food, and that in
Hmm.
itself was, like, super fun for me, just, like, being able
Hmm.
to show them, like, "Hey, this is what, my grandma sometimes makes for me," or something that I just love in my culture, and being able to do that, I think even in these big spaces like Broadway, I think that's probably
Hmm.
just where we need to keep moving toward, because we haven't been doing that. Everything's in English nowadays, and, I think a little bit of a hybrid of with K-pop having both. I think that's
Hmm.
super amazing, and like Luna being able to act so well in English, even though she may not be like fully fluent in
Hmm.
English, like that is just remarkable. The fact that she's able to do that, or for Boyoung, like I don't know like Boyoung, what her fluency is, but just like
Hmm.
seeing these people learn different things and doing things that push you past your boundaries is just, I think, really, really cool and hope
Yeah.
something we can get back because
Yeah.
that we can keep going in the same way that we are. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so
And
thank you.
yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know, language is such a dope skill. Like, and I think what people didn't realize is like, which I understand people wouldn't know unless they knew her. Like Luna doesn't speak English.
Mhm.
like, like she really doesn't. And she has this whole show that's like I would say probably primarily English, right? It is split like with Korean, but I would say it's at least a 60-40 split,
Mm-hmm.
right? Leaning into English. Anyways, back to exactly what we were talking about because nothing happened.
Nothing.
Um, yeah, like I think it's just really people don't realize that a lot of this, not a lot of this cast, but yeah, like cast members like Luna, like she doesn't speak English like that. Bo Hyung too, she doesn't speak English like that. And yeah, their English has gotten like a lot better since like even the first time that I met them.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally like nothing. Like we got our hellos and we got our goodbyes and we okays, yes or no's, right? Um, and to have them do a complete show, not even just like their own lines, but it's just like being able to be in a show that operates in English, right? Like primarily they're being spoken to in English, primarily like the tasks that are being done are in English. Signage is in English, right? Like all of this stuff, like if you really think about it, yes, there are translators like Estelle and Sarah who are amazing and helping out, but like they can't be there 24/7, right? And so they're just doing the thing. And I'm like, that's incredible. Like I can't even fathom if I was dropped into like a Korean, like in Korea, dropped into a Korean musical as the lead. And
Mm-hmm.
then I couldn't even fathom. Like, especially doing when you're doing previews, like the script changes daily. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You just memorized your lines in whatever a foreign language you're learning, and then the next day it changes.
Yeah.
Like that would blow my mind.
I
And
know.
yet here we have like everyone doing it. Even the people who are even for Josh, like Josh is learning like he had like Korean lines too. And
Mhm.
like he doesn't his Korean isn't the strongest either. And here he is also doing it in previews. Like he gets
Yeah.
lines that are new, changes it. Boom. Now it's he has lyrics, his rap lyrics are so
Yeah.
fast
Dropping.
and they're
Yeah.
all in Korean. And like again, like he has to take the time to then like figure it out for himself, obviously with the help of like Helen and all of us, like who can like who have like the strong grasp of the language and like what does this mean? What is this like? What's the inflection? What is it supposed to like? What is this? Right? Essentially. I'm like, that's incredible. But
Yeah.
like it's never really talked about or never really thought about too deeply because I think there's just an automatic assumption that we just do this. You know what I mean? Because everything usually happens in English. It's like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, everyone speaks English. You get new lines. Great, done. This, that, whatever.
Mhm.
um yeah, I think having that layer of understanding of it makes at least makes me appreciate everything so much more.
Yeah.
And yeah, and even for the people who don't speak Korean, like I'm like, wow, my Korean got a lot better. It's still bad, but like, oh, it got like a lot better. Like we're able to converse and talk and like choke and do stuff like that. And maybe we can't talk at the deepest level in Korean, of course, but then we can always whip out our translators, about like ask our friends who are willing to take the work to like help translate things. Like
Mhm.
there's just so many ways that we can go about connecting with people, like not in the same language.
Yeah.
And I think that's super dope and not as discussed for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah. I don't know if this has ever happened on a Broadway stage, especially with Luna just leading the show
Hmm.
so flawlessly and being able to execute such a hard thing. Like leading a show on Broadway is no joke. Like
Hmm.
having to do all that stuff. And I'm sure like, having the dual languages in rehearsal, like that must have been just a very unique experience that maybe hasn't really been done before, which is just remarkable in the sense of just like we need to keep moving towards things like this where we're including everyone and including people who, I'm sure there's tons of people in Asia, in China, in Taiwan, in Japan, in Korea who probably have Broadway dreams, but they're like, I could never
Hmm.
do that because we don't speak the same language. But and
Hmm.
there's obviously theater there, but it's like everyone, there might be a lot of young kids who see stuff on YouTube or about Broadway and are like, I want to do
Hmm.
that, but how can I do that? And I think this show probably gave a lot of people that gift. And I know there's tons of fans who like flew over to see either
Hmm.
Kevin or Luna or Boyoung or Min or whatever, or seeing, all these different K-pop idols and stars and things, and like getting exposed to a whole new art form that isn't just K-pop, it's like Broadway as
Hmm.
well. And that community is also very different from the K-pop community, I'm sure. And also like the dance community, or just like everything being so different for every single experience, and just getting to like kind of bring everyone together. I think it's
Yeah.
really, really, really special. Um,
Hmm.
and for you, having worked on projects like BTS, where you're in these giant stadiums, like how is it to be in the Circle in the Square Theater, where it is very small? I mean,
Hmm.
compare it, like the Broadway theaters are meant to be small to have that kind of intimacy with the audience, so you're not too far away. And just
Hmm.
like for you, getting to see, everyone turn on their flashlights during meant to be, and like waving
Hmm.
their arms, like those experiences, was it a little bit more personal, where you could see people's faces instead of just a giant stadium of blurred
Yeah.
people? Like what was that experience like for you, just getting to
Hmm.
experience that, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like I love performing, especially I love performing live, especially because you get those reactions from people, and
Yeah.
it's this consistent conversation that you're having with the audience in terms of like energy you're giving and like energy and vibe, and it's also a conversation between you and the people you're dancing with on stage. Just this consistent conversation of energy and sharing energy and giving and taking. But I think I think my favorite part about being in that was it's like in the round, right? Like it's not flat. Like it's
Yeah.
I think a lot of times performances happen where it's like them, you, and there's this distance.
Mhm.
But then I feel like as performances went on and we kind of figured out as a cast how to like really handle this like circle, because it's weird. Like it's weird like
Yeah.
to perform like that, especially on Broadway. Like it's weird to have people this close and also in this sort of formation. And so then I think after a couple weeks, after like honestly after like at least a month and a half, like we're like, oh, like this is like details like where to look and like how to interact and how personal can we be, and like where should our default eye line be. Like can we how do we get people excited, how do we get people to like get off of their seat and realize that like this is live theater, you know what I mean, as
Yeah.
opposed to like a lot of times you can literally sit back, fall asleep, and like no one cares. Like you're literally invisible.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and I think what was really cool is like in this one, like you're not invisible. Like
No.
as an audience member, like you feel, especially by the end of this, like especially when you get to the concert portion of it, like you're not supposed to be invisible. Like the
Yeah.
whole point is to be as seen, like yourself, like you are in this performance as much as we are, right?
Mhm.
Like I think what's so cool, like that I think about a lot is like I watched the show, like I had like COVID for a little bit. And so I was like
Yeah.
out of the show, and I came back, but I couldn't perform yet for like whatever the rules were. So
Mhm.
I have my mask and I'm watching a matinee, and I'm like, I'm like on the standing room, and I'm like, this is so sick. Like if you are on the wings, like the left and right, like you can see the other audience on the other side. And like you
Mhm.
could, and you like you see the reactions, you see the dancing, and you see the laughter, and you see the whatever. Like it was such a human experience. It
Mhm.
was just so weird because like usually when you're an audience member, you're literally invisible. You see the back of people's heads and the people performing like 200 miles away. Like typically. And
Mhm.
so to have that experience where like you can see the actors, they can see you, the audience on the other side, you see them, they also see you. The actors on the stage can clearly see you.
Yeah.
People are like, can you see us? Can you hear us? I'm like, I can see and hear everything. Like if you can see me, I can see you. Like it's that one of those instances. And I think that was just such a special thing that I just had so much fun doing, like
Mhm.
being able to react, like being able to react to people. Like I like people would react to us, but I'm like, I'm reacting to you guys. Like there's some audience members that are doing like the stupidest, craziest, funniest stuff. And I'm like, no, that's hilarious. Like I want to laugh, like I want to laugh too, and I will. Like, oh, you brought your 17 light stick. Like, I'm gonna point out your light stick and be like, that's dope. Where did you get
Yeah.
that? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I love
Like,
that part of it, was the interactive aspect, but like I only sat in kind of the center area, but you could see
mhm.
everybody, and they
Yeah,
could see you, and you could see people filming or doing whatever, and like it's like, go
yeah.
for it, have fun.
Yeah, people are filming stuff, and I'm like, yeah, unions, and I'm like, I'm not gonna say anything. Like, I don't see that. Like, I'm whatever. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, no, that's
yeah, it was a fun time.
I know for the last, because I was there for closing, I was
Hmm.
there for the last two performances. And I waited for 4 hours actually in the cancellation line just so I could get in for
Hmm.
the closing since it was fully
Uh,
sold out. And it was
yeah.
so cold, but I was like, this is so worth it.
Hmm.
And then once it got to like the like 20-minute concert pretty much at the end, like me and my friend Steve that I made in line waiting for tickets, like we just got up and we were dancing and having
Yeah.
fun. And like I don't think there's any like I've been telling people like there's no other theater experience that I've ever had before that was like K-pop. Like it was so unique in the sense of you felt like, obviously the interactive aspect is super cool, getting to take out your phone and like be with the community of people and you can see the lights around. It's not just like behind you or anything. And it's like
Hmm.
being able to have something that maybe it's like a little hybrid of Broadway and a K-pop concert, but still having that small feel is really, I think, different than anything that has been done before. And just the fact that, K-pop was able to do that is really, really fun,
Yeah.
really just unique and being able to, just get up and dance. Like, I don't know any other
Hmm.
shows that do that where,
Yeah.
people feel so comfortable and so compelled to just get up because they can't sit any longer or they just can't like wait any longer. They have to be a part of the show pretty much.
Hmm.
For you, do you have a favorite number that you performed and a favorite costume that you had? Because I know towards the end, like, with your pink costume and then your white costume, you both had like I guess
I
it's
am
ruffles
a
or the
flamingo.
yeah,
I
yeah.
am a bird. I'm a
Like, what
shining
was your
bird.
favorite number to
I
perform in
mean,
costume?
favorite number, I think it has to be like Hundero, Shake
Mm,
It. That's my favorite number because like it's so raw for the guys. Like every dude can we can do our strong suits in that song. Like
mm,
what everyone is good at can shine through that song. Like some people are more about like they're like people like John, like his thing is like his like demeanor is so strong and he gets this whole strut down the lane that's
yes.
like the sickest strut in his like dope ass like long hoodie coat. Like Abraham gets this crazy belt like on the stage where he's just like going off on like and then like I get to dance like OD with Josh, like we get a little breakdown, like Kevin gets this crazy
Yeah.
like all the way like he gets his belts out and like I think that song is able to just hit a lot of all of our strengths, whether that's like the charisma or the singing or the dancing or the whatever. Like it shines so well like in that song.
Yeah.
And that was my favorite to perform because I literally was just performing as myself. Like I'm not like performing as someone. Like, yeah, I'm like Wooyeon, whatever. But like
Yeah.
it's just an extension of like the way I like performing. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have to put on any sort of like, oh, I am this is art. You know what I mean? Like I have to be somebody. Like I don't gotta do that.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's my favorite to perform. Outfit wise, oh, it's a toss up between my teddy bear denim that I wear for Hong Kong Gnome because like that one I was like, damn, this is really fresh. Like the full teddy bear denim one, it was such a fun look. And
Hmm.
then the the America like
Oh, yeah.
the one cut sleeve, and I remember like Sophia, the other designer, also being like, we have the sickest jacket, and it's like this half jacket, no sleeve thing that we got made, and like I don't know how it's gonna work yet, but we're gonna try it, but it's my favorite piece. And so then like I'm trying it, and like I literally have this like full arm just like uncovered from the shoulder down, and like this
Yeah.
is a whole jacket. I'm like, this makes no sense, and it's sick, and I love it. Like, am I cold? Am I hot? It doesn't matter. And then we had this gauntlet on at the same time for like archery, and I'm like, this makes no sense. I love it. It's
Yeah.
so theater. It's so K-pop. It's so weird, and like it made me feel really cool at the same time. Like I felt like fucking like Hawkeye. Like I was like a superhero. So yeah, those between those two, like they were just so fun between
Yeah.
those two outfits. Yeah.
One thing I noticed, like specifically, was how you guys look like such a unit as Fate with like the outfits in America or, in Meant to Be, and like everyone's in the same color scheme and everything, but everyone has a specific like costume that is very unique
Hmm.
to them, where John has his giant like amazing coat, or you have that, like I guess you said
Hmm.
flamingo thing, or like
Yeah.
Josh is in something like a kind of, I guess it looks like a sweatshirt kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like a
It's
hoodie-ish sort of a vibe.
yeah, and Kevin
And
like in his awesome blazer, like
yeah,
everything, it looks so like together, but it's everyone gets to shine through in their fashion as well. It's
yeah,
not just
it
in
was
their
it was
skill.
really cool in that way.
Yeah.
Because definitely like Clint and Sophia when they're like getting the designs together, just for like let's say they're curating clothes versus like making the actual pieces from scratch. Like
Mhm.
they asked us like very early in the process, like, what do you guys like wearing?
Yeah.
What do you feel like is your dude's vibe? And I'm like, I love my stuff baggy. Like I dance. So I my thing is I want to move. And then like people like Kevin, like he's a real idol. So their look is a lot more like on the chic slash like usually you get your skinny jeans and like it accentuates like your height and like has more of like a presence and like kind of like a pretty boy look. And like John's like 8 feet tall. So he gets all like the cool stuff that's like that accentuates his like posture and how tall he is and like that presence. And like Abraham is more of like he likes his stuff being money. You know what I mean? Like in his Hunger Gnome outfit was like I forget, it was like Gucci or something. Like it was like some expensive stuff. And I'm just like, and like Eddie is like low key super buff. And so like in like the pink outfits, like he finally got his like shoulder. He was like wearing this like he looked like Celtic Guardian from Yu-Gi-Oh! Like he looked so cool. He had like
Yeah.
the sleeves super cut and his shoulders are like showing off. And like he's using that kilt thing
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
nothing, like things like that. Like it really accentuated us as people and like our personalities. And I think that's why it also helps so much in terms of like that cohesiveness. Like we again, even in that layer, like we didn't have to act like anybody in those instances. Like we're just again extensions of ourselves in
Mhm.
these outfits, being able to like perform and do whatever we want to do. We're just being a little more extra. And
Yeah.
that's like pretty much it.
Yeah, I think in the world of Broadway, usually you see an ensemble, everyone looks exactly the same. And like for, K-pop, like, yes, it's a very ensemble show, but everyone's unique. You can like
Mm-hmm.
talk about every single person in every single costume, every single number where someone's acting a certain way or having a different demeanor than someone else in the same song and you're singing the same thing. But it's like the uniqueness, I think, that you guys brought to K-pop and getting to
Mm-hmm.
be in such a unit, but also so unique is like definitely very different than what, Broadway audiences are used to. And I hope that we
Mm-hmm.
keep going towards that because I think like even with ensembles, like everyone's a different person. You can't just
Yeah.
push everyone together to look exactly the same. Like everyone has a different story that they want to tell, whether that be in what they're doing with John and his like demeanor, and with you and your dancing, it's so expressive. Like being able to accentuate like all those differences is really, really cool. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, like everything K-pop is doing, like let's just keep moving towards that because
Yeah.
everything I have sure wanted from Broadway in a long time, where representation that represents me, or everyone getting to be on a playbill, or everyone getting to
Mm-hmm.
be on an album, including swings, like everything that I've been hoping for came in K-pop. So I'm like, let's get it back, please.
Yeah. And
Um,
and I think what's like what you're also saying too is like okay, this is a really weird reference, but like I think K-pop is essentially like the first of its kind in this sort of a way, right? Where you get like things that you've explained, where the ensemble is literally not just like a picture of like some graphic. It's like them, the people are on this playbill, like where the swings are able to be on the album, where the ensemble themselves get to be individual people. And like, yeah, in typical Broadway shows, yeah, you like people do have their ensemble favorites. Like I've seen Broadway shows where like that guy in specific, like specifically that dude is going
yeah,
crazy. It's great.
yeah.
I think it's like you kind of have to lean into that yourself as opposed to K-pop where it was just given to you. Like here's everyone. And like you can pick whoever is your favorite for whatever reason. Um, like the K-pop's just the prototype, right? And like there's plenty of I don't know. I have video games in my head, but it's like in order for like the Switch to exist, like, and your little handheld Switch, like the Wii U had to exist on its
Yeah.
ugly ass chunky controller with the screen on it. You know what I mean?
I had
And
all like I had the Wii, I had the Wii
yeah, I
U,
had the Wii, I had the
I
Wii
have
U, I had
the
everything.
Nintendo right there. Like I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying.
Like all of this had to exist in order for the next thing to exist. And like, yeah, the Wii U was this chunky, weird thing that like didn't really find its market. I get it. Like the Wii even itself was really weird when it came out because you had like a nunchuck and a thing, and you're like, what is this? And then, but then those things came in, like turned into the Joy-Con that you can like play with, and those are really functional and like slipping into whatever. Like all this stuff has to pre-exist. Like it's never perfect on that first run, and it's also never fully understood what you can even do. Like the potential, like now that it exists, you're like, oh yeah, like that. I didn't realize you could do that with this thing. But then now that it exists, like I'm sure within the next like few years, like Broadway is gonna look so different because all of a sudden people will be like, I didn't know you could do that with
Yeah.
this thing. I didn't know you were like, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you're supposed to do that. Like, I didn't know that people would react in a certain way. Like, all this stuff has to, yeah, it's all just a big thought experiment. And of course, Broadway is expensive as heck to put together. But
Yeah.
I think the more we are able to have the space to make those creative decisions, like it'll make Broadway just like such a different place. Because I even, and again, I'm not really from the world of Broadway too much, right?
Mhm.
But even how I've experienced some shows that I've watched, it's like let's say like an established show like Lion King, like before Lion King, I can only imagine when Lion King came out, like seeing puppetry like that for the first time on stage must have blew your mind.
Yeah.
Like you must have, or like when you saw the masks for the first time that like go over their heads, like that
Mhm.
must have blew your mind because you probably have never seen that. And probably when they first came out, people were like, I don't understand. Like I could still see his face like with the mask. Like that's weird. Like I'm sure people said things like that. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or like, oh, obviously he's not a real gazelle. I don't understand why this. Like, I'm sure everyone's like, but then over time, like suddenly you get this thing that's like a staple of that show. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think that's gonna happen more and more, where it's like people are gonna be like, that's weird, that's suspicious. Like people are gonna see stuff, and then they're not really gonna understand how it works or functions just yet. What do I do with this Wii U pad? Like, but then it'll make sense
Mhm.
once people really, one, get used to it, and then two, there's more instances of it, iterations of it that are used in different places. And I think K-pop is just one of those instances where it's like we are the fat looking Wii U controller that we don't really know what to do with yet, but like people will see it and they'll figure it out. They will find creative ways to use this thing. That's at least how I see it,
I love
you
that
know.
analogy, and especially like I think my siblings gonna love this analogy because we grew up with the Wii. Like, yeah, no, I totally love how you put it, and it's so true. Like, there has to be something before. That's why, with even with movies like Crazy Rich Asians couldn't happen without Joy Luck Club. Like that had to
Mhm.
happen in order for something else groundbreaking and amazing to occur. And so like K-pop, even though to me it's like the end all be all of like amazing,
You're like, it's
it
over.
could be
It's
like
over.
the stepping stone for the next
Hmm.
great thing. And then for you, I wanted to talk a little bit about closing. I know we haven't really discussed that at all yet, but just touching on it a little bit, like, can you talk about maybe how you were feeling on the day of the last performance? Because it was a very bittersweet day. I know for
Hmm.
me, I had just seen it for the very first time the night before, and I was trying to come back just to be in the room, and especially for that panel, that meant a lot to me. And getting to pretty much perform in like an actual K-pop concert, like what were your emotions like? Because I know you kind of did like, I guess, a
Hmm.
little spoof on Kate's video on TikTok. That was like, I saw it.
Oh,
It's like, oh my gosh, James is like hilarious and just
I'm like, is this how he's coping?
like,
Like,
is he coping with humor
yeah.
maybe? Like,
Like, oh,
like
he's one of those. No, I'm just like, yeah. I mean, honestly, I think obviously leading up, right? That week from the day that we learned that we were closing to like that last, to fighting for the extension behind the scenes, to having this big rally from the community to actual closing, like all this stuff happened like in the most condensed timeline, right? This is like maybe like 4 or 5 days where all
yeah.
of this has happened. And it, like, I personally went through like every emotion possible. I was like shocked, but not. And I was sad and devastated, but also incredibly happy from all this like community rallying, and also really hopeful about future things, but also just so disappointed that like we couldn't do that. Like it was just, I, I felt so many emotions. I've never felt so many emotions in such a short amount of time. Um, but I think going through all that whole week, and also being able to do that together as like a company, it led up to that final day, that final performance where it was just like, it was just explosive. I mean, like the whole week was explosive because we were like so like we knew we were going out with like a bang, right? Like
Yeah.
all of us, like we were pulling at the stops. People were like doing vocal things that I've never heard in my whole life. Like
Hmm.
people are doing riffs and like holding notes, and like people are dancing like the sharpest they've ever danced. I was like, what is going on? Like people are going crazy, like Super Saiyan like 10. Like it was nuts. Like Ultra Instinct everywhere. And like especially in that last performance, like we were just cruising. Like we're like, let's just go out like full bang. Like dance the hardest we could dance, sing the hardest we could sing, like act these scenes like they really mean something to all of us, because they do.
Hmm.
And so yeah, like even in instances like Abraham talked about with me in this instance, like there's this part in the Kundala where like we literally just like we like turn around, like me and Abraham are facing each other and we're doing this like
Uh-huh.
dance, and we turn around and we see each other, and like typically like I'm like laughing, like I because I'm having so much fun, so I was typically I'm like laughing, but like in one of those instances, like we turned and we saw each other, and then like the exchange of look that we exchanged was like, it wasn't like a happy, it was like a understanding of like oh shit, like we got to do this, like this is like we got this, we got to do this. And it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It was just such a like, it was such just an understanding of like where we are and who we are and what this did and what this is like in this very moment. and and I think that that kind of carried on for that whole performance. Like yes, it was a big celebration, yes it was super fun, but
Hmm.
it was such this clear understanding that you could feel the like it was fire
Yeah,
that was burnt,
it
like people were
was.
burning. um and I think that burning was just like exactly how I needed to feel like carrying out through the show, because I never like feeling like I'm used to like doing back in college, like we'd only be able to perform like once or twice. Like we'd prepare a set for like 2 months, like a
Yeah.
6 minute set for 2 months, and we'd be able to do it twice, like max. So it's like the like each performance had to count like so much. Like you had to be present, you had to get it exact, you had to get all the cleaning cues, and you also had to feel like exactly how you want to feel after being able to only like after all this preparation. And I think being from that background and then going into that last show, like I was like, I know exactly how to feel. I know exactly how I should feel and what I should do and what I have to do to make this like to get out of the show feeling like, yeah, like we did it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, long-winded answer, TLDR. It was really fun. It was so fun. Just I love setting things on fire. I love it.
Yeah, I think like just being in that room and seeing all the love that was being given toward the show and towards the cast, and like, everyone was just so happy to be there. I know I was. It was just
Mhm.
not that I've never been to a Broadway closing before, and I don't know if I'll ever be like, I don't know if I'll ever go to a show that was it so as amazing as the closing show of K-pop, because like, I've seen other shows like after, and I'm like, oh, the energy isn't the same. Like,
Mhm.
it's not that amazing, explosive thing where, where everyone's doing this, I guess, for the last time for now. Um, and just having those emotions like being, pulled out in the songs. And like, I know Luna did some like different things too. And I'm sure everyone, like, everything was just like to the max. Like, everything
Yeah.
so, everyone put everything they had into the last performance. And I don't think that you could have asked for a better show, because I think everyone
100%.
that I talk to and everyone that has seen the show like loves it. And I'm like, this is amazing and we need to get it back. That's what I keep saying to
Mhm.
everybody. And I even said it at the panel. I was like, how can we get it back? Like, as I'm bawling
Yeah.
my eyes out. And for you, like, you know, What is your advice for the young Asian kids who want to pursue performing? Because obviously you started
Hmm.
later and your path was a little bit different than most people's, but like in the same, what is your advice for people who want to be on those stages doing shows like K-pop, people like me, I
Hmm.
guess?
What's your advice for me? Nah, I mean,
And only for no, I'm
and
just-
only for me. Yeah, I mean, I think in the big picture things, is like big picture advice is like, especially for kids who like might be in positions where they're not the ideal standard, right? Where we're not from the backgrounds that might um that would give us the privilege to do things a little more naturally, I guess, right? To just, we got to make our own lane a lot of times. Like we just got to be so undeniably good at what we do. And
Mhm.
like, yeah, we have to work 200% harder than a lot of the rest. Like that is fact. Um, which sucks, but like that is fact. But like when we get to that point where we are so undeniably good that it's like it, we could literally be anybody in this current moment. Like we just have to be at a level, like if you work towards that level, then nothing else really matters. Like
Mhm.
I think people get caught up a lot in like yeah, like the logistics of it, but like if we have to just at least shoot for it. Like
Yeah.
I have to shoot for going to these auditions, even though I was garbage and like couldn't say anything and like couldn't sing and couldn't dance. Like I at least had to show up,
Mhm.
right? That's the big picture thing. And I think logistically, what's a really good thing that how it has helped me is like find your mentors.
Mhm.
Find the people who are more than willing and would love to invest their time and energy into you as an artist and as an individual, because these mentors, like, they will they like, I would be nowhere without like my mentors, dance wise and life wise, who have just like poured their energy into me, being like, hey, like it's small, it could be small things like, here's a job, or like, are you interested in this, or I think you should take that, or like, I think this class might be good for you, things like that. Like they go such a long way in like your own building your own confidence, but also building your own skills and like just building you as like a person. Like tell people all like this all the time. Like I was never a person until like after college. Like I didn't know at all, like I don't know who like I was or who I was trying to be until after college, like way after college. And
Mhm.
that was with the aid of people helping me figuring that out.
Mhm.
So yeah, logistically find your mentors, and I don't know, just have fun. Like figure out what makes you happy. Like I think passion also is a weird word, because like for me, dance these days, it's not like necessarily like my passion. Like it's not like I have to dance. Like if I had to drop dance like right now, I think I could, because, and that's not because of like I don't like dance or anything. Like I think we're very cordial these days, but I think it's because I understand what my priorities are these days and what makes me happy. And
Mhm.
like there are just so many things that could make me feel still happy, and like make me feel still driven, and make me feel like that, like I'm just a human being. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so because yes, being passionate about something is super dope, but also logistically, at the end of the day, dance is my job. Like it's my 9 to 5, you know. And like we are such multifaceted people. Like I could take up knitting tomorrow and be like, this is the dopest thing I've ever done, and suddenly I drop dance and I become like a pro knitter. Like that could be a total possibility. Like I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I think being as close to human as you can is like just always the goal.
Mhm.
Because then the world just becomes a bigger place and a more
Yeah.
fun place to live in. Yeah.
No, I think it's always about being a person first and a performer second.
Hmm.
And trying to find things that you like or that you don't like, or figuring out who
Yeah.
you are
What
as
you
a
don't
person.
like is a good one.
Yeah, but like what you're not
Yeah.
willing to deal with in your work, or just,
Hmm.
knowing how to stand up for yourself, I think is also very, very important,
Yes.
in knowing what your boundaries are and what your worth is. Because I think a lot of
Hmm.
times with performers, we're like, we'll do anything to get the job, like
Hmm.
literally, yeah, anything. We're like, it's like, no, we got to step back for a second,
Yeah.
just like kind of deal with who we are as a person first. And then if you get these jobs and stuff, you got to be content. You can't put too much pressure on yourself, and just like have fun. Like you only
Yeah.
live once. You're not going to be able to do these things like again, if if there's something super unique that won't come up again, it's like you got to just enjoy it and really be able
Hmm.
to just live in the moment. Because I think I think for myself and like for a lot of people, it's hard to do that because you're always thinking of the next thing. But it's
Yeah.
like, enjoy where you are right now. I know I'm trying really hard to do that, even though I'm trying to like apply to
Yeah.
college and everything's super hard. But it's like trying to make sure that you're also appreciating where you are and your journey in that, and not putting
Yeah.
pressure on yourself to do, like, obviously you want to be the best that you can be, and obviously being Asian American you do have to be like
Yeah.
four
There's a
times,
standard
yeah,
that's
as
like placed upon
better.
us for sure.
Yeah, but it's like we have
Um,
to work now so that it can be easier later for
yeah,
everyone who's Asian in this
exactly.
industry, and just being able to take that and really deal with it as a person, and just be able to like
Yeah.
enjoy the experiences. Because I know, I bet for a lot of the cast, like, you're just doing your job. You didn't expect to, like, you weren't trying to make history. It just
Yeah.
happened. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it's an amazing thing that does happen. But, you know, you're not just, oh, I made it. You're like, I'm doing something I love as well. And that's, I think, really important, and something that I think people often forget, because you're like, a lot of times when history is
Yeah.
made, it's just people doing what they do. It's not them trying
Yeah.
to purposefully be the first Asian this, or the first, black this, or first person
Hmm.
with a disability to do this. Like, it just happens
Exactly.
progressing, like, as things progress, and just being able to take that and just be a person first and foremost.
Yeah.
Like, you're not who you are as a person who's like crafting. Like, for me, I could probably go into marketing if I wanted to, like,
Yeah.
try, or go into
Anything.
something else, even though Broadway is my first and foremost biggest love right now, and just like
Hmm.
trying to make that come true, but also making sure that your home life is also as balanced, because you can't have one that is too high or one that's too low. It has to be equal. It has
100%.
to be a balance in order for you to truly succeed. So next, I was wondering, what is your process for choreographing? I know recently you did a workshop with Kate, and like,
Hmm.
I'm watching it and I'm like, how in the world do you create something so cool? And I mean, do you just start like freestyling first, or listen to the music, or
Hmm.
and then create moves that correlate to what's being said, or like, just, I don't know, what is your process? Because I don't know anything about, trying to choreograph a number. I know how to sing
Hmm.
like really well, like that's my strong suit. But when it comes to dancing, I'm like, I don't know too much about that world. So can you just
Hmm.
explain like your process, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably similar to other like to probably it's probably similar to singing and other arts like that, but I think starting off with like a mission is really good. Like, what is the goal here in this session? Like, let's say for me and Kate, like we have like literally like an hour to make something. So like what are we supposed to do in this 1 hour that will like get our like what is the goal for this 1 hour? Um, so that's the first thing. And then also it's like with dance itself, it's like, okay, what kind of vibe do we want? Like what do we want to be fun? Do we want it to be challenging? Do we want it to be like tour and like super like concerty? Do we want it to be like super sad, emotional, artsy? Like what that's kind of like the blueprint is first, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think having that blueprint first is really good to have just so you can always pull back to it. If you're kind of like leaning off track for a second, you're like, okay, wait, we're trying to make this feel like this, right? Remember?
Mhm.
So that's I think that's a really good thing to have first, those two things, the goal, the blueprint. And then I would say the third thing is having almost a constraint is really nice. A constraint will force you to like it forces creativity, which is really nice.
Mhm.
So the constraint could be the time limit. Like we only have 1 hour. How do we make a piece in 1 hour? A constraint could be like it could even be the vibe, right? So like maybe the vibe, if we're trying to do a very performy tour concert vibe, then like, oh, suddenly certain movements are probably slightly constrained because like, oh, that wouldn't fit in the pocket of like this sort of a vibe or something.
Mhm.
Um, constraint could be um, even in the process, it's like, oh, we already used this move like 2 3 times, or we use this like our chest rolling this way, like it
Mhm.
seems kind of similar to this other move, like how do we have to change it now, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think those those three things, the goal, the blueprint, and then the constraint, I think having that and just kind of tossing them in the air and having those as your base helps a lot. Because I think a lot of times as choreographers, the big thing is called choreo block. And
Mm,
it's like you just get into a space of like, I'm trying to make something. I've been here for like 2 hours and I have like nothing.
yeah.
And you're wondering why nothing feels good and nothing looks good. And it usually can get drawn to one of those three things. Um, but at the same time, it's like if you're not feeling it, you just take a break.
Yeah.
You can always, like me and Kate, we were in the studio yesterday and we were in there for an hour and like we made only like what, like 15 seconds of this new thing. And we were just tired and we weren't really feeling it like 100%. So we're like, okay, let's take a break.
Yeah.
Let's just literally hang it up for the day and then we'll just get back to it and the next day and we'll feel like a lot better. We'll be like have more energy, have like we'll be refreshed and like something happens in our brain and our body. Our bodies and brains feel different every single day. So it's like, okay, let's just go into it being fresh again. No
Hmm.
big deal.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, long-winded answer.
No, that's
Something
super
like that.
cool. I mean, I am trying to get better at dancing. Like, I've had to record some pre-screen videos for like my
Hmm.
auditions and things like that. And so I think for me, it's always like the movement, like being meaningful is always something that really helps. It's like when there's really something behind it that's like
Hmm.
being put into the choreography, like that's always the most powerful for me. And I think the best one I can remember it is when like, there's a story and things like that. But hearing about, your process as a choreographer, it's like very, very cool because I'm not in that world. So learning about something new is always like, it's helpful, and always
Yeah.
trying to learn a dance audition right now for like Syracuse University. And it's really
Hmm.
kind of hard for me. So I'm like,
Yeah. I mean,
trying
that's how I
to
feel
get
about
all the
singing stuff
advice.
all the time. Like whenever they send me singing things, I'm like, what are you guys doing? I'm like,
Yeah. No, we're
"Ah,"
like total opposites in that way.
yeah, like singing
Yeah.
stuff, it always makes me so nervous because I don't have that. Like I just literally don't have like that mindset of like, oh, here's the things I can do to prep for this. Like I just, for me, a lot of times like I get the music, I'm like, now what? You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
that process isn't as instilled. I mean, I've learned a lot from being on the show.
Mhm.
Like 100%. I'm way better than I was like when I started. 100%. I was god awful, and now I'm just awful. now, I mean, I'm a lot more confident in it, which is one thing, which is really great. But yeah, it's just having that knowledge and the muscle memory too. Just having those muscles flex. Like I literally haven't had certain muscles in action before, like singing. And I'm like, people's diaphragms go out like 5 feet. And I'm like, how do you guys do this? Like it's crazy.
We're
And
trying
I
to singing and dancing at the same time. That's always
yeah,
a big struggle.
it's so hard. And then but again, it's like it's just a muscle, right? Like acting is a muscle. Self-tapes are a muscle,
Mhm.
right? Like just the pre-screen that you're doing, like literally getting in front of a camera, no matter how good you are, like that is a skill to
Mhm.
somehow make yourself presentable for a camera and make yourself as human as possible when you're like singing and dancing to your phone. Like like it's such a it's just another muscle that has to be flexed.
Yeah, and I
100%.
mean, like, this is kind of a weird singer question, but like for you when you're singing, like, do you ever get afraid that like something's not gonna come out, or like you have stress, or
Hmm.
like for me, when I get nervous, like my throat gets all dry. It's just like
Hmm.
wondering because I know for some dancers just like, oh, I can sing too, but for singers, it's like, okay, I gotta do this first. I gotta
Hmm.
steam my voice. I gotta do warm
Mm,
up. I gotta do all of this. Like, I'm just wondering, since you're more of a dancer, I think, than a singer, even though you're obviously like very skilled at that too. Like, I don't know, does that ever come to mind? It's just kind of a weird, like nerdy
I mean,
singing
no,
question.
I totally understand. I mean, like for me, like I had to learn the vocal exercises and like, oh, what is that you're eating? Like it'd be like things like what's a throat coat? You know what I mean? Like all this stuff that I learned helps with singing. I'm like, great, like those things can aid. But I think the big pivot for me was like just being confident enough to let the sound come out. Because there was a good amount of time, especially when I first joined, where it's like I just thought I was bad because it was always shaky. It was like
Mhm,
always this like shaky sound, and so I just assumed that it was bad because I'm just shaky. But then
mhm,
it was just that like I wasn't allowing myself to like just do it. Like don't think about like how it sounds or don't think about like what they want. Just literally fully commit to the idea that you just have to get this note out.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the more you fully commit, it's almost like, I'm sure like people do this all the time too for singers, but like sometimes when you're doing an impression of somebody or like an impression of a song or an impression of like a dance, like it comes out like, and people go like, wait, that was actually really good. Like that sounded really legit. And it's because you're fully committing.
Yeah.
And I think that when that full commitment for me comes out, or like once I started fully committing to like singing, like it, everything became easier because I'm like, oh wait, that doesn't actually sound that bad. And like I'm getting also the positive reinforcement from people like, oh yeah, that wasn't that bad. And and I also say I have like my voice is pretty loud too. But that's, I think that's from teaching so much.
Oh, yeah.
It's like so like things like in Hundero again, like there's like that last little thing where I'm literally like belting like at the top, and it's like, yeah, there's like, just go, just do it. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, I don't know. And then like at the first when they gave this to me, I was like, I'm literally doing an impression of Abraham, because this used to be Abraham's, like this used to be Abraham's belt. And like I'm literally just doing an impression of him in rehearsal. And then they're like, hey James, can you actually try it? Like, can't we look? I just want to try it. Just try it for this one thing. And I'm like, I'm literally just copying Abraham. Like you guys are like, you guys are making a big mistake. But yeah, I think just sometimes just gooning around like that and just trying it, fully committing, helps a lot in
Mhm.
like more ways than one. Not just singing, but like dancing too. Just fully committing to
Well,
looking
yeah.
stupid. You have to look stupid. You like have to sound stupid in order to not look and sound stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure
No, that
there's a
makes
great way to say that in an eloquent way, but like that that is what it is.
yeah, no, you just gotta fully just go for it. I think, in the dance classes that I have had, like just trying my best to do, because that's all you can really do
Yeah.
when, depending on your skill level, you're not gonna get like 100% better in one
Yeah.
or in one thing.
Like
It's just
it's
like
literally impossible.
yeah, and the journey
Yeah.
that you take to, get there. And for our last question, I was gonna say, did you have any like little backstage rituals you did, or like a high five with a certain dresser, or like waving to
Oh
someone
my
before you
gosh.
did something? Like,
There's a lot of stuff that we all do. Like I'm sure Kate has probably given you a few, and I'm sure like Tim and Patrick will give you a few too. For me, oh my gosh, I had so many. For me, I have like, there's in the top of show, me and Jewel. Oh, first before even top of show, me and Eddie are always last to get dressed.
oh my
So
God.
like they literally call places, and like me and Eddie are straight up like we're in our dressing rooms, like still putting on makeup. And so
Oh
like so
no.
we'd come down at places and be like, hi Eddie, hi James, because we always be last. And so like that was one. I
I
would
do think that
always,
Eddie would be good at this. He's a he's done Broadway
no,
before.
he's a pro, but I think that's why he's always last,
He's
because he's a
always
pro. Like, because he can get ready like in 2 seconds like this.
that's so no,
Like,
that's
yeah.
hilarious. No, keep
So
going, sorry.
no, you're good. So then that was one. Me and Julia have a secret handshake for top of show. Um, that like gets us like literally right when Julie comes out to do her Ruby monologue in the beginning, in that little flashback top of show, me and Julia are just dapping with our little secret handshake. I got a little like secret thing with Min too, being like, hey, like better kill it. Like almost like what is it? Like warning each other, like you better kill it. I am gonna kill it. Okay, do it. You know what I mean? We all have like special, like I think just ways of like comfort each other and like prepping each other as a whole. There's a quick change in the back where me and the Jester Kiki, like KK, we like the very first time I did the quick change, I'm always accustomed to like taking off my shoes myself, right? So I was like, I'd step on my own heel to take off the shoe.
Mhm.
And then but then she's there helping me, so I don't need to do that. So for the whole first like week I would be stepping on her fingers,
Oh
like, and then she would be like, yo, you gotta stop stepping on my fingers. I'm like,
no.
ugh. And so like our next ritual, like literally, so every performance after that was don't do it. She'd be like, I'd come in, run in, she'd be like, don't do it,
Oh
don't
my
do it,
God.
James, don't do it. And so we do that whole quick change, being like, don't do it, don't do it. We have that. We have, oh my gosh, there's just so many. There is, and this is my Korea we after all the nows and everything go now, we walk back into our line. I'm pretty early in it, and Zach is like one of the first or second people. So I'm walking back to my place, and I stand next to Zach, and like I just either I like slap him like across like the chest, or like I slap his butt or like something like that, where I always just kind of like mess around with him. Happens like, and those are sprinkled everywhere. Like there's so many opportunities, like so many times where we always just like slap each other, like
Oh
push
my
each
God.
other, or like we're like we just mess around with each other. And I'm sure people see it every so often. But like, yeah, I think my favorite things are just like those interactions like that, especially on stage. A lot of on stage antics that I'm sure everyone does, like in every show. But like my onstage antics are like I'm literally like pushing people like all over the
Oh my
place
God.
because I'm just like, yeah. And they're like, yo, you gotta stop. You gotta stop pushing me, man.
We're just having fun. It's
No,
okay.
it's all staged. It's all staged. It was all planned. It's all choreographed.
Yeah. No
Um,
one can get mad at you if you say that.
yeah, and like I don't know, there's an even at the end of the show, at the very end of the show, and blast off. Like me and Kate are at the top of the steps, like just us two. And like the direction is technically like everyone be as like calm as possible, so that like when people are bowing, they can like the audience can read the bows very clearly. And then you read, and if you watch some bootlegs, like me and Kate are literally at the top of the stairs, like full out, like because I'm trying my best to be still, but you know what? Like, oh, I mean, it's only the two of us, so we're fine.
I'll have to
Like,
watch
well,
the videos again and be like, what are they doing back there? Let's see.
yeah. If you like, I think what's so fun about this show, which I'm sure if I had more time that people would have the opportunity to figure that out, was like you can watch like specific people, and like and this happens in every show, but especially in K-pop, you watch specific people and they have like the craziest like tendencies, and um small things that they do, and that like once you know about it, you're like, wait a second, have they been doing that this whole time? You're like, are they allowed to do that this whole time? Like, yeah, people, we were pulling like the craziest stuff. Like there's a part in like the ballad for the guys where there's a line about eating parfaits, or like you're a parfait. And then it's just like, so then Josh eats a parfait, and then he got a note to not eat the parfait. So then I
Oh
took it
no.
and I started eating a parfait, and then I got a note to stop eating the parfait. But then at the end of everything in that last week, me and Josh are both eating parfaits. Like,
Is
yeah,
that a
like,
meant to be? That's a meant
yeah,
to
that is fully and meant to be.
Okay, then I have to watch the video again. Then
We are both
I will
eating
love
parfaits for our life. Yeah.
to hear it.
But yeah, I mean, I've listed so many in that one moment, but I think TLDR, I wish that people had more opportunities to see all those moments because a lot of it happened on stage.
Mhm.
But again, I'm sure there'll be future iterations of either of this show or of new shows that will learn from this show in terms of like how to execute, and like how to, I'm sure there will be another full cast of Asian homies in some other new show that will be even better and like amazing. Like I'm sure of it, 100%.
Mhm.
Um, and that when they come out, I'm gonna be there and it'll be amazing. And I'm gonna be like, look at that guy, like, that's hilarious. Like, like I'm ready for all that to happen
Yeah,
because
no,
it's
I
gonna be
am
so
too.
fun.
I mean, I'm sure like I'm really hoping that, K-pop can either come to LA, which is like where I live like 2 hours from LA, or like even
Hmm.
Vegas. Like that's a drive away from me. I'm like, come, but it has to be in the next year before I go to college. So just like making sure that, it has a future. And like there,
Hmm.
I just want to observe, like you said, every person, because I've known people, like I've been talking to people who have seen it like 18 plus times or 20
Hmm.
times. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could have done that. Cause like I only saw it twice. And so I only got to see, what it was at the very end, not like the differences through previews and all that kind of stuff. Cause I know like song order changed and all that
Hmm.
interesting things like that happen with previews. But it's like hopefully, there will be that second production of the show somewhere else where people will really really appreciate it, and also just take it as what it is and be able to love it as much as I
Hmm.
know so many people do, even in New York, even though it wasn't like like what we hoped it would have, what could have happened. It's like there's still the hope that it can happen again and be
Hmm.
better than it was last time. Yeah, and so lastly, like, how can we follow you on Instagram? How can we support you and like just make sure we're always catching up, whether you have a workshop. If I was
Of
in New York, I
course.
would be at like every single one,
Of
but
course.
going across the country, it's a little bit hard to come to,
I
those
understand.
things. But just
Totally
how can
understandable.
we keep supporting you, James?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on socials, underscore James Co. on all my socials. I'm pretty sure Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever.
Mhm.
But I'm also teaching a lot these days because yeah, we've wrapped up, and so we are now holiday season. New Year's coming up. Projects will come in once pilot season for like TV and film rolls out more towards like January. So I'll be teaching. So if you want to jump into class, follow me on my socials, and I post my teaching schedule all the time. And I don't know, you don't have to support me exactly. There's so many people you could support who are actively working and doing their thing. So I would say that if you are interested in that, just like, I don't know, look up your favorite production of a show or something, and then like look at the cast and see what they're up to. I don't honestly, because they're doing so much more than probably their one show, and they're
Mhm.
probably doing so much more than their, I don't know, what their one rehearsal or their one gig. So see what they're up to. Sometimes they have like, a lot of times they have their own side things that are their real like passion projects, I would say.
Mhm.
So help people fund, like help fund those people or generate that interest for those things. And yeah, maybe it's like only one or two people, like actually maybe like your circle isn't the biggest, but maybe it helps one or two people like through
Mhm.
that door. And if that is the case, then like great, like you've done your part. You know what I'm saying? Um, yeah, let's just all help each other out. We're all just people trying to figure it out. No one's doing anything crazier than anybody else. We're all just people figuring out life. So it's all the same.
Well, anyway, thank you so much, James, for joining us, and to everyone listening. Thank you so much for listening to well, I was gonna say Z Broadway, but that's my other podcast. But
Mhm.
thank you for listening to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha, and make sure you're
Woo!
following me on Instagram at Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha and at Broadway_corner, and make sure you go follow James as well, because obviously he's incredible. So just like keep everyone listening, keep supporting him, keep
He's
going,
all right. He's
and
okay.
just like do all his classes, do literally everything, and just make sure that we keep this awesome community that is K-pop, because I think there's so much love in it, and just yeah, it's just so great and brings me so much joy, I know, and I'm sure that this experience for you has also been just amazing. So thank you to everyone listening. Yay.
Thanks for coming. Woo!